Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello everyone. Today, inshallah, we will complete the novel A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. We have already uploaded a video about chapter 6, The Marquise. It's on the school's YouTube channel. Today, inshallah, we are going to study chapter 7, Two Promises. Two Promises. Chapter 7, A Tale of Two Cities. Let's go on quickly to the summary of the chapter. It's an easy part, and also it's a very important part. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A year had passed. Charles Darnay had given up his position as Lord of Evermont lands. In the last chapter, chapter 6, we knew that the Marquise was the uncle of Charles Darnay. He was stabbed in his heart while he was asleep. Before he was stabbed, or before he was killed, we knew that Charles Darnay and his uncle the Marquise had an argument in which Charles Darnay told his uncle that he was ashamed of his family's name. Also, he told him that he would live in England and he would give up his position, as Lord of Evermont lands. We knew also that he wanted to leave all the money, the lands, and his property to the poor farmers. A year had passed that Charles Darnay had given up his position as Lord of Evermont lands. He was now working in England, teaching the French language and being a translator. So he left France and he went to work in England, teaching the French language and a translator. He was a good teacher because his mother tongue was French. So he was a very good teacher of French. He worked hard and became well known, or became famous. He was a very famous teacher. Darnay had loved Lucy ever since his trial. Let's remember chapter 4, the trial of Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay loved Lucy since this point. He hadn't yet told her that he loved her. He didn't confess his love to her. He decided to speak to her father about it first. So he wanted to tell her father to ask her hand for marriage. He went to see Dr. Minnett one summer evening when he knew Lucy was out. يبقى هو راح علشان يطلب ايد لوسي من باباها دكتور منات، واختار الفرصة ان دكتور منات كان موجود لوحده وان لوسي was out. First, Darnay told the doctor that he had loved and admired Lucy and that he knew how much the doctor and his daughter Lucy loved and depended on each other. وكان عارف قد ايه ان هما الاثنين الاب وبنته بيعتمدوا على بعض. طبعا he was an old man and he had only one daughter. يبقى هي بتعتمد على باباها بكل الاعتماد في كل شيء، وهو طبعا لانه رجل كبير السن وملوش حد الا بنته فكان بيعتمد عليه. Charles Darnay said that he would never separate them. يعني بعد الزواج مش هيفصلهم عن بعض نهائيا. لازم ان هم يعيشوا مع بعض او يقربوا من بعض علشان لو الدكتور احتاج اي شيء. He mentioned, or he said, Charles Darnay mentioned the fact that he was like the doctor. الجزء ده مهم جدا. يعني هما الاثنين كانوا متشابهين في ايه بالظبط. He left France because it was such a bad place. Charles Darnay left France because it was a very bad place. He came to England to work hard and hope for a happy future. Okay? يبقى في هنا أوجه تشابه between Charles Darnay and Dr. Minnett. Number one, they both loved Lucy Minnett. الاثنين الأب بيحب بنته وتشارلز دارني بيحب لوسي مينيت. يبقى ده number one. Number two, إن they both left France. هما الاثنين تشارلز دارني ودكتور مينيت سابوا فرنسا because it was such a bad place. طيب الصدفة جمعت برضو إن هما تشابهوا إن هما الاثنين برضو came to England to work hard and hope for a happy future. Charles Darnay said that he would bring Lucy closer to her father. هيقربها أكتر من باباها لما يتزوجوا. Here the doctor affected by Charles' sincerity تأثر بنبرة الإخلاص اللي في كلام تشارلز دارني. And Dr. Minnett promised that if Lucy ever agreed to marry him, he would never oppose or refuse the marriage and would give Lucy to him. يعني بشكل بسيط جدا، يعني خلينا نقول بشكل عامي، لما تشارلز دارني طلب الزواج من لوسي مانيت، دكتور مانيت قال له انا ما عنديش مانع، ولكن هنسأل لوسي مانيت، لو هي وافقت I would never refuse the marriage. Darnay wanted to return the doctor's confidence with full confidence on his part. Darnay يعني حب يرد الثقة دي بثقة زيها. طب عمل ايه؟ He wanted to tell the doctor his real name and why he had come to live in England. يعني كان عايز يقول له اسمه الحقيقي وايه السبب اللي خلاه يترك فرنسا ويهاجر من فرنسا ويجي لإنجلند. But the doctor stopped him and said that if Lucy loved him, the doctor would allow the marriage and would listen to Darnay's real name on the morning of the wedding day. On the morning of the wedding day. طبعا تشارلز دارني promised to do that. يبقى نرجع تاني كده، الشابتر اسمه two promises. This is the first promise. ايه هو الفيرست promise؟ علشان ممكن يجي يسأل عنه. ان تشارلز دارني promised Dr. Minnett that he would tell him his real name and all of his past, all about his past life. امتى بالتحديد؟ on the morning of the wedding day. طيب يبقى كده عرفنا الفيرست promise. It was an hour after Darnay had left. تشارلز دارني طلب الزواج وعرف من الدكتور ان الدكتور ما عندوش اي مانع، ولكن هيسأل لوسي الاول وروح. بعد ما مشي بحوالي ساعة. It was an hour after Darnay had left. When Lucy came home, she headed into the reading room or the study room, غرفة المكتب بتاع دكتور منات, and was surprised to find his reading chair empty. She called him. قعدت تنادي على باباها, but there was no answer. Then she heard a low hammering voice in a hammering sound, in her father's bedroom. يبقى هي راحت تدور على باباها دكتور منات في الستادي روم او حجرة المكتب، ما لقيتوش. سمعت صوت دقدقة بالشاكوش، تمام، في البيدروم بتاع باباها. She walked slowly into her father's bedroom, and there saw her father working on shoes again. طبعا ده جزء مهم جدا. ايه اللي خلى دكتور مانات يرجع لميكينج شوز مرة تانية؟ كلام تشارلز دارني. ليه؟ Because Charles Darnay reminded Dr. Minnett of his past life in the prison and France. She came out of the room running back frightened and crying to herself, saying, "What shall I do? What shall I do?" Her father had fallen in. Her father had fallen in اللي هي رجعت له الحالة المرضية مرة تانية، اللي هي حالة النسيان المؤقت، حالة فقدان الذاكرة المؤقت. لما كان بيفتكر أيام السجن كانت بتجيله الحالة دي. She went again into his bedroom and walked up and down with her father for a long time until he had gone to bed. قعدت تتمشى مع باباها لغاية لما باباها استريح، أو خلينا نقول أعصابه هديت ونام. He slept heavily, and the tray of shoemaking tools and his old unfinished work was all as usual. سيدني كارتون اللي اتفقنا وعرفناه من شابتر 4 اللي هو كان the assistant of Mr. Stryver the lawyer. Sydney Carton was a regular visitor to the house of Dr. Minnett, but he was the same careless man who cared for nobody on earth and nobody cared for him. One day, Sydney Carton went to Dr. Minnett's house with intention, with a purpose. Lucy had never been at ease with him. Lucy had never been at ease with him. عمرها ما كانت مستريحة لهذا الشخص. And she received him in her room with some embarrassment. She looked at him and saw some change. She looked at him and saw some change. لقت إن هو متغير شوي. He didn't look well. He looked strange. And she told him that it was a pity he wouldn't do anything to change his life. يعني كانت مشفقة عليه جدا وقالت له ان انت صعبان عليا جدا لان انت مش قادر تغير من your lifestyle. He said that it was too late to change it. خلاص ما عادش ينفع اغير حياتي خالص. He would never get better. عمره ما هيتحسن. He had just become worse. حياته بتزداد سوءا بعد يوم. يوما بعد يوم. He wanted Lucy to listen to him. She said she would listen if that made him happier. يبقى معنى كده ان هو جاي to confess some secrets to Lucy. He opened his heart to her and said that he was glad, he was very happy, she had never loved him. تاني. He opened his heart to her and said that he was glad or very happy, she had never loved him. لو جينا نبص ونفكر شوية كده يعني في يعني huge similarity between Charles Darnay, the man who wanted to marry Lucy, and Sidney Carton. But there was a great difference between them. Okay. طيب هو كان very glad she had never loved him. Why? Because he wasn't worth of her love. هو لا يستحق. He wasn't worthy. He wasn't worthy of her love, and that he would make her very unhappy. بفرض إن هي تزوجت هذا الإنسان الفاشل, she would become very unhappy. He said that since he had met her, he thought about changing his life and that she filled his life with hopes and dreams. من أول ما قابلها وهي ملت حياته بالآمال والأحلام. He asked her never to tell their conversation to anyone. He asked her to keep this secret. He said that he would always remember that he told her all his feelings and his faults and his sadness were gently carried in his heart. قال لها يعني انا شايلها لك جميله ان انت اللي حفظتي الاسرار بتاعتي. He then made a promise to her. This is the second promise. What is the second promise? That he would give his life, sacrifice his life. هيضحي بحياته to save her life or to save hers or any life dear to her. تاني. He promised her to give his life to save her life or any life dear to her. يبقى هو هيضحي بحياته علشان ينقذ حياتها هي أو حياة أي شخص عزيز عليه. طيب. Let's move to some important questions. This question: why did Darnay consider himself similar to Dr. Minnett? زي ما قلنا, what are the similarities between Dr. Minnett and Charles Darnay? Number one, they were both exiled from, or they both left France. Number two, they were driven away from its oppressions and miseries. هم تركوا فرنسا بسبب الظلم اللي بيحصل في فرنسا. They both left France and went to England to earn their living and both became successful. تصادف ان هما الاثنين لما تركوا فرنسا راحوا انجلند. يعني ما فيش حد فيهم مثلا راح ايطاليا راح المانيا, لا. دي كانت صدفة ان هما الاثنين went to England to earn their living, to work there, and both became successful. Number four, they both loved Lucy Minnett. Question number four, one of the most important ones. What was the doctor's reaction when Darnay wanted to tell him his real name? The doctor stopped him and said that if Lucy accepted to marry him, he would listen to his real name on the morning of the wedding day. Bardo, question number five is a very important one. What was the effect of Darnay's proposal to Dr. Minnett? السؤال بطريقة تانية. What happened to Dr. Minnett after Darnay had left? طبعا he had a fit for a few hours. رجعت له النوبة المرضية for a few hours. طب عمل ايه؟ He went back to shoemaking, but Lucy was able to relieve him and bring him back to himself. Question number seven. Why didn't Sidney Carton propose marriage to Lucy? Because he knew that he wasn't worthy of her. هو يعلم إن هو لا يستحق هذه البنت. If he married her, he would make her miserable, very sad and unhappy, and disgrace her. يسبب لها العار. And she would be sorry and regret marrying him. طبعا what are the two promises given in this chapter? احنا لخصناه وقلنا ان the first promise, Darnay promised Dr. Minnett that he would tell him his real name on the his real name and all about his past life on the morning of the wedding day. The second promise, Sidney Carton promised Lucy Minnett that he would give his life to save her life or any life dear to her. Okay, this is all for now. If you have any questions, just write your questions on Edmodo and we will answer it as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Till next week, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.